Do you know what Dorothy's biggest problem was? Dorothy's biggest problem was that she wanted to be somewhere else, away from her life. If you remember the movie, and no, I'm not doing a talk on The Wizard of Oz, that's just so typical. I've only done one reference to The Wizard of Oz in 15 years of ministry, but I thought today was a really good one compared to considering what I wanted to talk about. So this song is sung right at the top of the movie, and Dorothy is singing it because she wants to be somewhere else, not where she is. Do you know what one of our biggest problems in life is? We all want to be somewhere else and not where we are. We all have these ideas, these visions of these things that are going to change our life. When I get there, when I go there, when I do this, when I jump over the rainbow, when I get the next job, when I meet the next boyfriend, girlfriend, everything's going to change. And it doesn't, does it? We get there and we end up being there ourselves. It's not just everything's going to change. It's like we're still the same person and we ended up in the same place, just different location. So there's this great quote by Byron Katie, and it's this. How many of you know who Byron Katie is? So she wrote an amazing book called Loving What Is. And so this is her quote. She said, "The world is nothing but my perception of it. I see only through myself. I hear only through the filter of my story." And she says it with that high-pitched tone, too. Right? So I see my world because I believe what I believe. I experience the world because I have a story that I'm living by. So how many of you today can really cop to this idea that you are living a story that you created? We are all living some story that we created. And what I love about teaching the exquisite risk is that Mark Nepo really asks us, what would life be like if we dropped our story? What would life be like if we knew nothing about ourselves? If we were really meeting ourselves for the first time? I was on the plane flying to Rochester, and I just love watching movies on Delta because you just feel like you're in your own private movie, and a movie screening room. And I watched a movie that I hadn't heard of. It didn't look like something I would normally watch. So I just checked the preview and I looked at it and went, oh, that might be interesting. Let me see. But I can never remember the name of it. What was it? Before I Fall. How many of you have seen that? So not a lot. You should. It's a fascinating movie. It's about a girl in her senior year of high school. And she, at the end, well, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, then you won't watch it. But as I watched this movie, it really did get me. But by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, this is such a bigger story than the story. Every single one of us has a bigger story than the story we tell. Because we're telling the story because of something. And when we got to the end of this movie, I was like, there I am sitting in a chair, crying, just like sobbing. I'm like, oh, and I have headphones on, so I'm not noticing that I'm making noise. And it wasn't until I went to wipe a tear that I looked across the aisle and this person was sitting there going. And so I just looked at him and I just went, it's a really good movie. But it made me realize that, this movie, the thing of this movie, it's like Groundhog Day in a way. She relives the same day over and over and over and over. But at one point, she comes to realize she doesn't need to live it the same way. Over and over and over and over. How many of us fall for that joke? We need to keep living our same life over and over. Well, I picked this job, so I guess I'm going to have to do it over and over and over. And so at one point she decides to, even though she knows how the day's going to end, she decides to start living it differently. And I just got it. I went, this is about life. This is about life. Duh. This is about life. This is about the idea that I can just live every single day as a brand new day and do things differently, really do things differently. So Byron Katie, so she writes this book called Loving What Is, asking us to love our lives the way it is, to love everything about our life. How many of you can sit here right now and say, I am willing to love every aspect of my life as it is right now, no matter what? There you go. Joyce is like, sure. Good. Well, it's kind of the starting point that you need to be at in order to create the life you want. So through the entire movie, right? Through the entire movie, Dorothy wants to go home. Now here's the irony. She prays to go over the rainbow, and she goes over the rainbow. How many of us have prayed for something? I want this in my life. I want to change my life. I want to do this. And then you get there, and you're like, oh, Kansas was not so bad. I can tell you that when I wanted to be a Broadway star no matter what, and I was going to be a Broadway star come hell or high water, whatever it took back then. And I decided that I would just go to every audition. So I did. In those first 3 years, I went to New York when I was 20. By 25, I was a Broadway star. And the first Broadway show I got where I starred in it, I went over that rainbow and could not wait to get back to Kansas. I talk about West Side Story often, but most people don't know how much I did not like being in that show. How painful it was every night to go out there and do those, to dance like that, to be in a show that was so filled with turmoil and hatred. It was all about, in case you've somehow missed West Side Story, it is about gang warfare. And it was funny too, in rehearsals, I kept being told by Jerome Robbins, he was like, no, come on, you're a gang leader. And he would tell me that if he would see me on the street. I'd be walking down the street, he goes, that's not how a gang leader walks. I'm like, I'm off set. But he wanted us to live this, really live this. And if anybody got in trouble, it was my fault, because I was the gang leader. So that was not a pleasant year of my life. So the whole movie, Dorothy wants to go home. She wants to go back. So I have a concept here. What if Ernest Holmes had written The Wizard of Oz? Just think about this. What would Ernest Holmes had said at the end of The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy goes through all that stuff, the monkeys and the witches and the houses falling on people? She goes through this entire life. How many of you have had that life? You all have in some way or another. Some house has fallen on you at some point in your life, yes? How many people have had a house fall on them? In some way. Okay, you have not. What'd you say? Hence the monkeys? Oh, for you it's the monkeys. Okay. So, I have to say, Adam said to me today, that Adam lives back in North Hollywood area, and he said, I'm going to put graffiti in the bathroom so the North Hollywood people feel comfortable. And I said to him, please don't. I feel much more comfortable sans graffiti. So anyway, where was I? The house that fell on your head, and the monkeys, and all these things, right? So Dorothy, at the end of the movie, meets the wizard. Now, he's not really a wizard, because let's face it, folks, there is no wizard. There is no God in the sky who's going to save you. There is no person, some supernatural person who has all the answers. But let's just say it's Ernest Holmes. And he comes out from behind the curtain. He's much shorter than me, and he says, there is a power for good. No, he doesn't do that. Because Dorothy would be like, what? I did not kill the witch to hear that. No, he comes out and he says, you have discovered the spiritual universe. Many others have discovered this same world, but each must make this discovery for herself. You are going to have a lot of joy sailing around this world of yours. Don't fight the opinions of others or waste your time arguing over things with anyone. Follow the inner gleam of your consciousness, and you will arrive. Couldn't you see him saying that to Dorothy? Yes. Wouldn't that be a cool thing for him to have said? I mean, she would then say, I need the classes. I need to sit in class and figure out what you just said, but it's sounding good. Something about there's an inner gleam in me. How many of you showed up at one of these churches and were like, you heard some minister say there's a power for good in the universe and you can use it, and you went, I have no idea what that means, but oh my God, sign me up. And here I am, like 30 years later. So there's Ernest Holmes. Those are really Ernest Holmes' words, by the way. Yeah, I didn't make that up. I wish I had, but I didn't. So he's saying, don't fight the opinions of others. Don't worry about the houses that fell on your head. Don't worry about the witches and all those monkeys and all the people flying around you who have an idea of what your world is supposed to be like, what your life is supposed to be like. Now, all Dorothy was doing is looking for home. All we are doing in this month is trying to remember who we are, because that's home plate. This is home. When I remember who I am, I'm home. When I really get who I am, there's this comfort, there's this safety, there's this place of I feel like I'm where I belong. So, the title of my talk today is It's Not the Shoes. I'll wait. It's not the shoes. So, Barbara, come here 1 second. It's not the shoes unless you're wearing these. Aren't those fabulous?
Thank you.
That's all I needed. Thank you. It's not the shoes. I said to Barbara today, she walked up the stairs and I went, oh my God, those shoes, it's not the shoes. So it's not the shoes, meaning Dorothy and all of us. By the way, how many of you still believe those shoes were the magic, just in terms of the movie, those shoes were the magic that got her home? It's what we're taught. As little kids, we are taught that somewhere in the world there are red shoes. I was going to say golden slippers, different story. Red shoes, ruby shoes, that if we can just get our hands on them, we can, and go home. Knock 3 times on the ceiling, right? That's all we believe that. I don't know about you, but as a little kid, I sat in front of that, and I hope I'm not blowing anything of this story for you. Have you ever seen this movie? The Wizard of Oz? No? Good. Okay. So now when you see it, you'll have the metaphysical understanding of it as you watch it. So way too many of us have spent our lives running after those ruby slippers, something like the ruby slippers, or Peter Pan. How many of you love the movie Peter Pan? How many of you sat in front of your TV as a little boy or a little girl in the 1960s when it was black and white, and Mary Martin actually looked into that TV and said, "Do you believe in fairies?" And you're yelling at your television, "I believe in fairies," which should have been my parents' first clue. But really, how many of you have believed in those things? And I know I'm making fun of it, but at the end of the day, we still carry this around. We still believe in this magical thinking. We still believe there's someone that's going to save us. We still believe that. And that's the paradigm we're jumping over when we remember who we are. So, it's not the shoes. Here's the other thing. Religious science is not the shoes either. This teaching is not the shoes. No teaching is the shoes. And I think way too often we come into this teaching and we believe Ernest Holmes is the Wizard of Oz, or that Troward is the Wizard of Oz, or the Transcendentalist, or whoever. Jesus is the Wizard of Oz. You know, but let's not forget at the end of that movie, he came from around and said, "I'm kind of just like you." And what does Glinda say at the end? You always had the power, but it was within you. The power was always there, in you. And then they unfortunately go to the shoes and say, click your shoes and you're home. So we have to be careful not to turn this teaching into some form of magic. And I know all the practitioners. If you're a practitioner, raise your hand. Okay, there's a lot of practitioners in this room. So or interns, thank you, Martha. If you are a practitioner or studying to be a practitioner, I give you a great warning here. Do not make spiritual mind treatment a magical tool, because it's not. Spiritual mind treatment, what we teach in religious science, is just a tool you use to remember who you are. That's all treatment is. The entire first 2 steps of treatment is nothing but all there is God, and that's who I am. That's it. You get that? Ernest Holmes basically said, he didn't teach treatment, by the way, the 5 or 7 steps. You get that all there is God and that's who I am. You get that and live your life from that. You don't need to be doing spiritual mind treatments. You don't need to be stopping everything you're doing right now and knowing the truth because you know the truth. That's where we're going. And there's nothing magical about it. Nothing magical about it. It's just very clear. What you are equal to in mind shows up in your world. It's that simple. And you need the power in you to help you use who you are to create what you want. So, as you all know, my father-in-law passed a couple of weeks ago, and I went home. I went to Rochester. Kevin went first. I taught my classes this week, and then I flew out on Thursday morning, and I just got back at like 1 a.m. last night. And I wasn't prepared to learn yet another life lesson. I really wasn't. I wasn't thinking I was going there to have a life lesson. I thought I was going there to give honor to my father-in-law and to run the funeral service, which he had asked me to do before he passed. And his oldest son, my brother-in-law, said to me, "Will you do it?" And I said, "Yes, of course." But Dad had always said to me, "I'd love for you to speak when I pass away." So it was a great honor. But what I found when I got there was such deep emotion, and not loss, love. It wasn't the emotion of loss, it was the emotion of love. And it was so overwhelming, so all-encompassing. My father had 4 boys. Kevin's father had 4 boys. There's so many parallels between Kevin's life and mine. And, watching his 4 sons get up and speak following me was just amazing. Watching the love that came out. But what I really noticed was this idea, greatness. What is greatness? I think very often we get caught up in this A-type personality, which I know I have, where I love doing, and I love creating, and I love succeeding. But greatness is not something we do, and I use this quote, "Greatness is not marked by the things you do, but by who you are while doing them." So it's not what you do. Do you remember who you are while you're living your life? Does nothing throw you off of principle? Do you allow yourself little moments of getting glib or angry or revenge-oriented? Do you hold grudges? That's not who you are. That's not who I am. I get that it happens. But the irony for me this weekend was, here I am, I teach this, I live this, these are my words. This is, well, not all the quotes, the top things. These are my words, love only, forgive everything, remember who you are. I know they came to me because I needed to do them. And they are my ministry. That is what, and remember who you are is the big part of it. Very, very important. But somewhere through the middle of the service yesterday, when I was overwhelmed with emotion, listening to my brother-in-laws and my husband speak about their father, I realized that, because recently someone said to me, do you have a mentor? Do you have a hero? And I went, I really don't. I said, I feel like there's no real mentor for me right now, and most of my heroes have fallen. Most of the people that I looked up to, somehow I don't anymore. And I'm sitting there listening to these people talk, my brother-in-laws talk, and all of a sudden, I realized that Dudley Bailey lived these. One of the kindest, gentlest, strongest, powerful, loving men I have ever known in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, and I have to close this thing out. I have to get up and be like strong and close it out and remind them all this is a celebration. And I'm just sitting there suddenly realizing that greatness, it can be found in the strangest little corner of your life where you may not even look to find it. Because it's not about what's happening in the world. It's about the people that are doing the things in the world as the people doing them. It's who they are, not what they do. There's greatness all around you. And I sat there and I made a decision there. I said, you know what? If I can just finish the next 30, 40 years of my life, 110, 120, however long I go, you heard it here. I'm never retiring. They'll just carry me up here and sit me down. And I'll say, Dorothy was, no. I made a decision right there and then, and I said, you know what? I don't need to do one more thing in my life other than live up to what that man showed me life could be like. A little house in Rochester, a big collie dog that he loved, a wife of 68 years that he adored, 4 sons that he would do anything for, everyone's friend. I mean, he was amazing. And I thought to myself, wow, I don't need to go climbing mountains. I don't. I need to do this. And this is really what this whole month was about. If you can remember who you are in such a profound way that your life feels great at every moment, not because you're doing great things, but because you are the greatness that is doing them. When you meet a friend for dinner, that's greatness on demand. That's really what this is all about. So at the end, greatness is not marked by the things you do, but by who you are while doing them. This church is not greater now because it's bigger. It just isn't. This church is only great if every person in it steps forward from their greatness. That's what makes this a great church. And on Sundays, it feels like it, doesn't it? Because we all come here and we are at our highest consciousness. We are at our highest level of love. We come here, we celebrate all of this. We celebrate the love. Do we then take it out into our world? I told this story before about Asilomar once when we were leaving Asilomar, and I was like flying on a cloud, and I went to put gas in my car, and 4 women that I had done workshops with at Asilomar were all screaming at each other over the cost of the gas. And I remember judging the hell out of them and realizing I was just as bad. Really, I was like, well, that was fast. That was like 3 minutes up the hill and spiritual's over. So that's who we have to be. Who we have to be willing to be. And you know what? We need to help each other because my father-in-law would say to me and Kevin every time he said goodbye to us, whether it was on the phone or in person, didn't matter. He would always say, take care of each other. That's how he ended everything. And yesterday when I finished the funeral, I said, this is what he said to me, and I know he's saying this to all of us. And I want to share that today. Take care of each other. That's what Jesus came to teach. That's what the love he came to teach was all about. Are you willing to love one another as I have loved you? Now, loving one another doesn't mean turning, and saying, you're not living up to God. Because how many of you still do that a little bit? That little religious science thing? It's like, oh, how'd you create that? Yeah. How many of you love hearing that? Don't you love it when a really well-meaning religious scientist says to you, how'd you get that cold? And then you just sneeze all over them. And then say, this is how you got this cold. Yeah. Oh my God. So, in conclusion, Dorothy had to do an entire 2-hour movie to find home, right? She had to go over the rainbow, run into the monkeys, run into the witches, save the room, kill the witch, although she didn't really kill it, it just happened. And because I don't like to think of Dorothy as a killer. So she had to go all the way to finally get back home. And I love at the end when she goes, oh, you were there, and you were there, and you were there. Remember that moment? Yeah. Well, guess what? That's life. You were there, and you were there, and you were there. Every one of you were with me all week. Because there is only one thing. And that's the love we have to start showing one another. I have to know that you are me and I am you. And I want for you what I would want for myself. And I will treat you the way I want to treat myself. And if you don't treat yourself well, then that's the biggest person you need to start loving. So this is the end of our Remember Who You Are month. We've done love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. Lest you think you're now done with those three, it's like, thank God we got through those. What's next? This is an ongoing process. This is an ongoing vision statement of this center. It's going to take a lifetime to live it, and I'm glad. Not a lifetime, by the way, I didn't say a lifetime to accomplish it, did I? I said a lifetime to live it every single day, just like that movie. Every day when you wake up, you have another opportunity to greet the first person from love. You have another opportunity to treat yourself well. You have another opportunity to be healthy, to be vibrantly healthy. You have another opportunity to let the creativity that you are come through. You have another opportunity to be greatness on demand. You have another opportunity to not let the monkeys or the houses or anything bother you. You have another opportunity to just let the greatest part of you forward. Are you all willing to do that? Yes. Then that's all I need to say. Namaste.